We all love fishing commercial fisheries, particularly through the summer months when, let's face it, the fishing can be quite easy and quite often you can catch on a different range of baits. However, during winter, things tend to change a little bit. We have to change the way and the amount of feed that we're putting in, the way that we prepare our feed often changes as well, and that's why we're here today. We're here with one of the country's top commercial anglers. This is Alex Dockerty. We're here at Lindholme Lakes and he's going to be giving us a little bit of a behind the scenes look at how he prepares his bait for this style of fishing in winter. Before we even get fishing, Alex, obviously bait prep comes into a lot, well, all aspects of our fishing, but I think there's a few things that, particularly when you've got to use fishery pellets, a lot of people like to do their own little things with them. They like to put their own little signature on them, don't they? What are your thoughts on preparing bait for venues that you're fishing like this when you've got to use pellets? What's your preparation process?
Unfortunately, there's no hard and fast rule with it, because the batch can vary in the pellets. So one little bit of advice: if you go into a venue regularly, go buy a few bags of pellets, have a little mess about with the best way of preparing them, and then stock up on that batch of pellets, because then you're going to get consistency in your bait throughout, whether it's a league or a festival or whatever you're fishing. It just means you've got a bit of continuity in what you're doing. What I would say as a general rule, the darker the pellet, the better that pellet will deal with water. So by that I mean, you see these are a relatively dark pellet, we've got quite a bit of oil in.
Yep.
So they'll cope really well with water. So for me, if I'm fishing a feeder, I can cover these with water the night before, leave them, and then stick them in the fridge, and the next morning they'll be perfect.
Do you do anything different? Would you fill that with water or cover them with water?
Yeah.
And would you put that tub in the fridge then, or you don't bag them up or anything like that?
Put it in water.
Yep.
For my feeder fishing, I like to use a bit of flavouring, so I use dynamite pellet soaks, obviously being associated with dynamite, but if you've got a favourite colour, flavour, by all means stick it on.
So you add that at that stage?
At that point.
Okay.
Then I will fill the tub with water just below the level of the pellets.
Okay, so if you just put your fingers...
So, say that was the pellets sat in the tub. If I move my finger like that, I want to see water.
Okay, yep.
Leave that to stand 45-50 minutes, take all the water in, bag them down, and then stick them in the fridge overnight. They'll be perfect the next morning. If you've got a lighter colour pellet, you sometimes have to just do them in the morning, because we won't deal with a large volume of water very well.
Okay.
And sometimes just quick splash, drain them off, and then you might have to keep working the bait through the day, keep adding a bit of water throughout the session.
Got to ask you, we still get asked all the time, lake water versus tap water. Have you got, and this goes for ground bait as well, if you're ever preparing your bait the night before, or do you have a tub outside that catches rainwater? What are your thoughts on it?
I use both. If I'm at home and doing bait, I'll use tap water. If I'm on the bank, I'll use lake water. Really doesn't bother me. If we're drinking it, it can't be too bad for you, can it?
Right. So what about your other pellets? If you've got like any 4 mils, 6 mils, do you, you know, when they come out of the bag, are you a fan of treating the bait in any way?
Generally not. I generally just use them straight out the bag, unless, say, this time of year I'm bomb fishing and I've got a batch that's floating or anything like that. Then I might add some oils and things to just make them sink. But as a general rule, as long as the pellets are good quality, I just use them straight from the bag. I'm quite happy to do that. Okay
then, all right. And what about ground baits? If you are going to be using ground bait, what are your thoughts on ground baits, particularly going through winter?
So the general rule, for commercial F1 style fishing, I'll generally use a green swim sim marine halibut through summer, which is quite high food value, quite oily and very attractive to the fish. Then through winter I'll tone it down, go more milled expander or a black swim sim style, finer ground baits, less food content. I can just put a bit in, use that as a tractor rather than a food source, and hopefully catch a fish as a result of that.
So using fine, and as it gets, you're using darker mixes, the clearer the water get and all that sort of thing.
Just mixes that are a bit less obtrusive. You know, if fish aren't really feeding, they're not going to go out of the way to avoid it. Okay, and would you mix those the night before as a rule, or...? Generally just on the morning, but what I would do, using any sort of expander-based ground bait, really over-wet it so it saturates the mix, so it's going to sink really well and then break down on the lake bed.
So would that be one of the first jobs you do when you get to your peg?
Yeah.
Just so it's got more...
Get to my peg, plonk everything down and mix my bait.
Brilliant. Right, okay, so you prepared your bait, corn and everything like that straight out of the tin. There's nothing to do with that. You're not a fan of colouring corn? Some people have got...
Sometimes maybe as a hook bait, you know, if you want to put your own little twist or you've got a confidence in something, by all means have a go with it. For me, I just like to fish what I'm feeding, so I just use boring corn.
Well, then, I mean, the next thing is introducing this feed. Obviously, if you're fishing a feeder, you'd put it through a feeder, but if you're doing lots of pole fishing, I know Alex is a bit of a pole, what was the term, pole cup freak?
Yeah, or a pot addict.
A pot addict, yeah, that sounds better actually, yeah, pot addict. Why do you carry so many different pole pots there, Alex? Can you just show us the style?
They all do a different job, so
okay.
We'll get a few out.
Alright, show us an example. He's got all sorts in here, and I think some of these have been doctored as well. So he's adapted them to do certain jobs.
So we'll start with that. So as you can see, we've got a few here, different sizes for different volumes of bait and doing a different job.
Yep.
So that I'll often use for tapping a bit of crush expander and things in the winter. Very little bait. You see, I've just cut the holes in the pot just so it'll easily release the bait. Nothing's going to get trapped in the form of vacuum.
So do you put that into the water then when you
just touch it on the surface?
Yep.
The water will flood the pot and release the bait.
Got you. Okay.
Then we've got the same sort of style of pots, but I've just taped that one up. So if I'm sprinkling maggots in, I can feed a bit of bait, and I'm not going to get the maggots crawl out the vents in the pot.
Okay. What holes have you got in the top of that? Can we just have a look? It's just one single. Okay. Yep.
And that's it. Then these are more feeding things such as ground bait, bigger volumes of bait, ground bait, micros. Might be a bit more attractive to fish, more geared towards my margin fishing than general open water work.
Okay.
What else have we got? We've got these style ones with little lids where I've just made a little lid so I can spring more for the depths of winter. I can feed very minimal bait, almost count my micros out of the pot.
Got you.
And then really it's just a case of varying lids to the particle we're feeding. So you see there we've got the one with a single hole there, we've got some with a sprinkle lid.
Oh yeah, got you.
Just for varied about.
Yep.
And depending what we're feeding and the depth, I can alter the lid to suit the situation we're in.
In winter, potting in with the pole it can be the actual only way to go. However, are there any occasions when you pick up the catapult, Alex?
Yeah, there's a lot of times where even in the colder months, catching can be beneficial, especially with baits such as maggots. Sometimes bait falling through your peg can just provide that bit of spark, that bit of attraction to home one in on the area where your hook bait is.
Okay, can I just ask you your thoughts on, there are so many different catapults out there. I'm not going to go down the route of pushing any brands or anything, but there must be one or two things that you look for. Is a certain pouch style, and can you just run us quickly through the technique of being able to do it accurately?
So firstly, I'd always pick a relatively heavy elastic. The reason being, when I'm coaching, I try liking it to throwing a ball. If I'm throwing a ball a very short distance, I can be very accurate because it's well within my capability. If all of a sudden I'm having to throw a ball 40-50 metres, my accuracy is going to suffer because I'm really maxing out what I'm trying to do. So always pick one that's slightly overgunned for the distance you're wanting to go. The second one is a pouch. Always use an oversized pouch, because this means when I put the bait in the pouch, more of it's in contact with the actual pouch itself rather than sat on top of bait.
Alright, okay, yeah.
So you're going to get a much tighter spread of your feed when you're feeding like that.
That's an interesting one, that.
So next point, when to use a catapult, because you see so many people go like that and then they pour it all over the keep nets. So one big thing is to maintain that tension on it all the time. And being predominantly a pole angler, a lot of it is about pushing the arm forward rather than pulling back with a pouch. So like that, always pick a far bank marker. You've probably heard it a million times. Work towards a fixed target, so that way you're not going to be going off course. And in that case, it's all just a case of angling your catty. If you pull it back the same distance, use a far back marker. The only variable is the angle of the catty. So if you keep that the same all the time, you're going to get a nice distance and you're going to work over a nice fixed area. And then lastly, don't overfill the pouch because that can cause your bait to spread. I'd much rather feed twice, get two lots of noise and keep a nice compact area than try feed too much bait in one hit and spread it all over the shop.
This has been a really interesting insight into how one of the country's top commercial anglers prepares his bait, and it's refreshing to see how simple he keeps it all. It's more about not the volume or the type of bait that you take into the peg, it's more about the way that you prepare and apply it to your actual swim. So we hope you've found this video useful. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more videos from this channel, from myself and from anglers like Alex, please consider subscribing. So thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next time.